You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast presented by Arizona Lottery. Don't forget to go out and buy your holiday scratchers. With John Schuster, Brad Allis, I am merely Mike Luke. All right, what was the final score? Arizona ended up losing
92-84.
92-84. All right, guys, this was listen, Arizona is still an awesome team. I still believe they're the best team in the country. This was kind of a dispiriting performance, though. I thought Arizona defensively was very poor, especially in the first half. I thought Tommy Lloyd made some curious decisions, which we will get into. And I think there were some glaring holes. I will say Caleb Love and Keyshawn Johnson, those were two guys that wanted it. John Schuster, then Brad Allis.
I think those are the positives. The negative that I heard was that when Brad Allis was going to be on this broadcast, I just knew it was going to be a tough day for Arizona. Just kind of had a feeling. But if you're looking and in losses are always frustrating. A lot of folks, understandably, I totally get it, wanted Arizona to win this game and look good and cement themselves as the number one seed. So in the course of the conversation today, naturally, we're going to talk about an overbearing amount of negatives. It's understandable. It's deserving. But two positives to take out of this, and Mike touched on it. Caleb Love and Keyshawn Johnson are going to do everything they possibly can to keep Arizona in games. And that's a nice, that's an excellent addition that gives you an opportunity almost every time you take the floor. So when things don't go your way, and this was certainly the definition for the first 25 minutes of things not going your way, of being problematic, of seeming like you did not have an answer. Love and Johnson played major roles in keeping Arizona around, and it's that kind of leadership. Those are going to be remarkably beneficial transfer additions for this program. And even though Arizona had the frustrating setback today, I think in the long run, the Cats are going to be just fine because you feel real good about those guys being on your roster.
Right? Yeah, it was a weird game because I thought Arizona was slightly better the first 8 minutes, where somehow they could not get a media timeout for 8 minutes. And then as soon as they came back, it was all Purdue for 17, 18 minutes, and then they went zone. In many ways, it was kind of like an NBA game. You had your ebbs and your flows. And then Arizona was the better team again for about another 8 or 9 minutes. And then Arizona, oddly enough, and I know we'll talk about this, went away from the zone, brought Boswell back in, and that magically allowed, Lawyer and the other kid to get hot again. That's to me the most frustrating part is when Arizona, those guys should not be able to torch Arizona man to man. I'm sorry. They're good players, but they're not great players. And Lawyer, and I know he did against Tennessee as well. He's not as athletic as Arizona. I mean, he's just not. And he got whatever he wanted all night, dropping threes, getting putbacks, driving the lane, teardrop, you name it. And for 20 some odd minutes, Fletcher Lawyer was the best player on the floor. Luckily for Arizona, for a while, Caleb Love was the best player on the floor, and he brought Arizona back. But yeah, it's just, I look at that Purdue team, and if Arizona doesn't leave them wide open for 10 minutes, I think Arizona's better, but maybe that's the game Arizona needs. They need a learning game, because you just can't go out and go through the motions and win. And sometimes it feels like they've tried to do that a few times. We've seen letdowns, but disappointing overall, because again, it wasn't Edey who beat you. It wasn't, for the most part, I thought it was an okay officiated game. It was Lawyer and the other kid, and that's disappointing.
Cole, I 1,000% stand by this. The Big Ten is overrated, and I do believe that Purdue is going to go out early. Purdue is a good team, obviously, but I stand resolute on what I say. There were some interesting decisions here, though, that I don't really know what exactly was going on. Brad hit on one of them. Kylan Boswell did not play well today. Arizona goes to the zone, gets it from 17-4. Boswell comes back in. Then Arizona obviously gives up a huge run again. And I don't understand the philosophy. And again, I'm not worried. I still believe this is definitely the best team in college basketball. But I also don't understand the philosophy of trying to force feed the ball to Oumar Ballo against Zach Edey one-on-one. When listen, those were prayers that Oumar Ballo was not scoring on Zach Edey. I didn't understand really either one of those decisions by coach.
I think there's going to be a lot of curious questioning, and we'll probably do a lot of it on this show. Let me get sidetracked for a moment here. Purdue's good.
Yes.
They're going to be no lower than a number 2 seed, and they deserve it. Their non-conference has been very impressive. They do a lot of good stuff, and they showed it today. They are, I think, at the free throw line because of Edey, the best ball screen team in the country, and that's why largely they get open threes. And what happened today is that once they got some open threes, because I think a lot of this had, frankly, to do with Larsson. I think in addition to Boswell, Larsson mostly played a pretty poor game as well, especially on the defensive end. And at one point, I think Lloyd outscored Larsson 21-0. I think Larsson had a bunch of turnovers in this matchup, and even turnovers he wasn't credited for. There were some moments where he did some good things during Arizona's run. But as much as we question Boswell, I think you can just as
for sure.
Look at Larsson, and we probably will in this matchup. And basketball also is a game of rhythm. And Purdue got into a rhythm that ultimately allowed them to keep Arizona at bay, even when the Cats were able to go on that run. But they're good. I mean, they're a heck of a lot more, I think, varied than they were last year. And it looked like there were some opportunities, for Arizona. There were a couple interesting anyway. Purdue's going to be a number 1 or a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, and they deserve it. And I think there's a chance that Arizona's going to be a 1 or a 2 seed, probably out west, and they deserve that. And I liked it in non-conference matchups. College basketball is scheduling games like this, so it was that played a role too. It's not like Arizona lost more or less on the road to a bad basketball team.
Right.
A team that deserves to be in the top 5. Big Ten overrated this. I don't know what your definition, Mike, of Purdue going out in the tournament early is, but I guess if they're going to be a 1 or a 2 seed, being an Elite 8 is going out early. I don't.
Sweet 16 max.
All right, a Sweet 16 max. Okay. So Arizona today lost also to a good team that ran stuff very well.
Yeah.
But the Boswell point, because getting back to your points. The Boswell point, I think, is excellent and curious, and I think Larsson really hurt Arizona more often than not today. And what we anticipated going into this matchup was that Arizona was going to have the advantage in the backcourt, and that did not come through at all. And Purdue got hot and was able to ride the hot hand, especially in the first half. And it was one of those things where Arizona's vaunted defense just looked a step slow. And I think a lot of that, I think it was 2 things. Arizona's vaunted defense was a step slow, and they were a step slow against a team that picks very well on the perimeter, and that's a bad combination, and it hurt Arizona.
See, this is why I've had listen, at the end of the day, I was wrong about Pelle Larsson. He's good. He's a good player, but this is also why I've had a love-hate relationship with him as he's been here at the U of A, Brad, and that he can do some really good things, but then he'll have games like this. There'll be more games like this where you're getting roasted defensively. Whenever you try to dribble the ball, you're turning it over. And the thing that has always driven me up a wall about him is when he does make a mistake, it's always at incredibly crucial times. It's not where you're up 13 or whatever. He generally knows when to maximize his mistakes. And that is something that has always driven me up a wall.
Yeah, I think to me the difference between he and Boswell is I can't tell you what Boswell did poorly other than maybe defend Smith. I can list off things, Pelle, because it was a numbers game with Boswell. When Boswell's on the floor, they didn't play well. But Pelle, I can point to 5 or 6 turnovers, a few that weren't turnovers, but where he dribbled into trouble and couldn't get good looks, some defensive lapses. I mean, he had no clue against. Again, Fletcher Loyer's a guy who dropped 27 or so on Tennessee, and also has games where he's in low single digits. He's a good shooter, not a great shooter. He's a good athlete, not a great athlete. He's okay. In fact, in some ways, he's like a Pelle Larsson. Does a lot of things okay, and today he was great. Excuse me. He was great for about 25 minutes because he disappeared when Arizona made their run. But yeah, that's what's frustrating. And that to me is the one thing I'm still worried. I don't think Arizona got exposed. Arizona's a great basketball team. I think if Arizona plays Purdue 10 times, they win 6. but the lack of that pure athlete on the wing, experienced pure athlete, because maybe KJ Lewis is that guy physically, but he's not ready yet, is still to me a worry. And again, I'm a wing junkie. I've watched too much Arizona basketball. I love the Richard Jeffersons, the Michael Dickerson.
Brad, was it you or was it John Schuster that said Lauren Woods could be a small forward type in the NBA?
That was Shu. Yeah. Shu misspoke. He meant 3 years in the future, a guy I've never seen play, Channing Frye. Because Channing Frye, I had no idea. And anyone who saw Channing Frye's NBA career coming is crazy because he showed nothing at Arizona. But the point being, I like 6'6" to 6'7" wings. And maybe Keshad Johnson's the closest thing they have. But, to go back to the point, the Big Ten is overrated and Purdue's a really good basketball team. Those things are not they're mutually exclusive. Purdue is going to be probably somewhere in the 27-4 range. I mean, the fact now they're already behind the 8 ball for their Big Ten record because they have the loss to an okay Northwestern team. But they're going to run roughshod on that league because Ohio State may be the second best team, and they won the ugliest basketball game I've seen in a long time today against UCLA. Arizona is also really, really good and great, and they're going to run roughshod because the Pac-12 sucks. So that's where we're kind of at. These are two teams that are really, really good and might not be tested after a few games and we'll see what that means for tournament play because unfortunately, both of these guys have had their bugaboos early in the tournament.
What I do want to get back to, though, in a second is something about I'm not worried about this team after this loss. Again, there were some disconcerting parts to this game, but we're going to get to that in a second. But first, Circle K. William Brad Ellis, when was the last time you went to Circle K? Be honest.
Yeah, within the last 72 hours.
All right. I went to Circle K today. I found $2.49 gas at Circle K. Go to the one on Tankaverde and Wilmot. Is that it? Yeah, Tankaverde and Wilmot. You know where that little curvature is going towards Tankaverde? Either way. Or maybe it's on Pima. I don't know. Either way, check it out. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details and Shady Rays. Listen. Now, you might watch some of these cool players out there. Zach Edey looks like a guy that would rock Shady Rays. Looks like he's got his life together, probably makes a lot of money off NIL. And when he steps outside, when the sun does come out in West Lafayette, I am assuming that he is wearing Shady Rays. Check it out again, exclusively for our listeners. Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code PHNX for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by 250,000 people. Shu, I want to get back to people coming in not liking my ad reads. I like that ad read. All right, but Shu, the one thing though, and we
me too.
Yeah, you know what? As long as we like it, you're my best friend. As long as we like it, then that's what matters to me. But listen, Arizona's got 2 dudes that want it. And again, I want to get back to that because I think that's important before we break down this game. Caleb Love, for all of the good and the bad. Rudy Bastillos, you were wrong about Caleb Love. I will call you out on the show for that. Caleb Love wants the ball. Caleb Love wants to play he's not scared of the moment at all. Keshad Johnson is much the same way. We've seen this now in a couple different games, especially against Michigan State, where down the stretch, it was Keshad Johnson and Caleb Love. These are the 2 dudes, for good or bad, when games are close, they're going to be the ones that are going to carry this game home.
If you're going to get to a point where you start to do the comparison game between Lloyd's first 2 seasons and this season, I think those 2 transfers are probably going to be the guys who stand out. And their desire to win makes you they clearly, Mike, do not shrink from the moment.
Right.
And you need, if you can get that kind of player, you take it. There are going to be times this year, where your Love shoots 8 for 23 from the floor or something like that. And you go, why did he rush that 3? Why did he rush that 3? Why did he do that? He tried to hit the floater on the inside. It just wasn't going to. And you're going to remember games like this and possibly games in the tournament that either keep Arizona around or advance Arizona through this field, where you're going to say, oh, yeah, That's the reason we didn't really care too much when Love was 8 of 23 in a game in January. Right. Because in big games, he does not shy from the moment. Johnson was a beast. Yeah. Johnson, there was a number of broadcasts ago, there was someone on one of your comments who, when we were breaking down Arizona, and one of the things that I think we talked about is that Arizona has roughly 2 players at every position, which makes their depth very envious. And somebody below said the player that Arizona probably cannot lose is Keyshawn Johnson.
Yeah.
And it's hard to argue. That the versatility is ridiculous. The athleticism, fantastic. He's improved his shooting, and he has no problem. If he's got a lane to the hoop, I don't care if you're 7'5", I don't care if you're 5'5". Let's take our chances and see where it goes. He fought on the inside under difficult circumstances against a team that blocks out very well, and again against a team that has immense size on the interior. So that tandem plays a huge role in putting Arizona in a position that it's going to be in. I mean, even after today, which I understand the frustration. I get it. You're right. Is Arizona ever going to be ranked outside the top 5 this year?
Only Bruce Pascoe will probably have Arizona outside the top 5. That's probably it.
Yeah. Is there ever really going to be a time where you don't think, hey, I don't know, lots of stuff can happen. But if Arizona is healthy, do we really think Arizona's not going to be a 1 or a 2 in this tournament? And there's going to be pretty much no question that you're going to slot them in one of those 2 positions and probably give them favorable geography in the process. You add the talent, the depth that they have, and guys with killer instincts like Love and Johnson into the equation, and you got an opportunity to be successful a lot.
Are the 1 seeds decided? And I know obviously things could happen.
Yeah.
But to me, there are the 4 best teams in college basketball and again, I haven't seen every game, but it's Kansas, UConn, Purdue, and Arizona.
That's it.
And Houston is the outlier.
And unfortunately, Houston's, and again, Kansas too. They are going to have that ridiculous Big 12. So what you might see is, I really think you could see Arizona and Purdue with like 6 combined losses.
I agree with that.
UConn's going to have maybe 4 or 5, and I think the winner of the Big 12, whether it's Kansas, Houston, 4 or 5. And maybe another team factors in. Maybe it's a Marquette, but I don't really see anyone else who is, again, barring catching fire. And maybe today was the magic day for Michigan State because they embarrassed Baylor. But I mean, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at right now the separation is those 4 teams. Maybe 5. Let's add Houston to the mix. I think they're still undefeated as well. But that's where college basketball is. And then you've got a whole big muck, 6 to 30. But, I mean, as bad as Arizona was in stretches, and frankly, as bad as Purdue was in the stretches, these are 2 excellent basketball teams. Going to Caleb Love, I don't know if he's going to have an 8 for 26 game, because I think he's bought in. He took 1 bad shot today, and I'm not counting some of those late rush threes when you have to. He took that 1 heat check 3 from in front of the scorer's table. But other than that, I thought he played really smart. I thought Keyshawn Johnson played really smart. I don't mind Keyshawn Johnson going right at Edey and trying to draw those fouls.
But I don't like the Oumar Ballo thing, and that was to me.
I don't like the one-on-one. No, but I will say this. I'm not as down on Ballo. So I thought Ballo, when he played within himself, running the floor, I thought his defense was solid one-on-one. The problem was playing man-to-man, let everyone else get discombobulated. But Edey worked his butt off to get. At one point, Edey had 17 and Ballo had 13. And unfortunately, Edey then got 8 in a row. But I don't think Ballo played bad. I don't think he played great. But he played smart on offense when he was playing within himself and going one-on-one with Edey. Same thing, Krivas. Krivas had that play. And I thought Krivas did a good job defensively as well. The problem was they shut Edey down, but they didn't shut anyone else down. So you had to go zone. But, Krivas had that play where he tried to go and tried to move him and threw the bad play in the lane. So, yeah, going one-on-one in the down low against Edey was dumb. And whether that was Tommy's decision, these guys' decisions, Boswell, I don't know. But getting him moving, driving the lane, what Ballo get? 3 lobs today? Mm-hmm. Arizona did good when they got them moving. Unfortunately, Purdue did well when they got Arizona's defense moving.
Well, and see, that's where I was disappointed, I guess, because you're right, Brad. He did, and I was wrong on Twitter, and that's why I acquiesced to the genius of the great William Brad Allis. But my problem wasn't necessarily so much with Oumar. It was I don't understand the strategy of going to somebody, and they did it 3 straight possessions when this game was still in the balance, and Purdue 1000% is okay with Oumar Ballo, leader of men, trying to go one-on-one with Zach Edey 3 straight times. That to me was very confusing. And again, bringing in Boswell after Patrick Stark made the point as well that Jaden Bradley did a pretty good job defensively out there, got a couple nice steals, was shooting some passing lanes. That was also a little bit of, again, Lloyd's a very good coach. He's far from perfect. Those were some real head scratchers for me, Shu.
I'd completely agree with that list that you just broke down. And in a small way, we use this example, this comparison a little bit. I know Brad likes this comparison. Mike, you brought this up on the show a few times as well. That was a game you guys helped me out here. I think it's 03. It might have been 05. They played Kansas. I think it was in the Elite Eight, where Lute Olson went away from Hassan Adams and Andre Iguodala and went with his starter instead. And in that game, Adams and Iguodala were the difference makers.
Yes.
Arizona got way down in the first half, tied the game, or had it close to tied at the half. And then Olson decided to go back to the starting lineup, and it allowed Kansas to go on another run that Arizona ultimately couldn't catch them. This game felt like a much lesser version of that to me today. That Lloyd insisted on going with Larsson and insisted on going with Boswell, instead of playing 2 guys who were giving them better opportunities on the defensive end because of their perimeter length in Lewis and Bradley. And it's one of those things where you know that, okay, I've got to go with my starters. This is the routine. This is the way things are going. But occasionally in the moment, you kind of, you know what you want to do, but you're not necessarily looking at what's happening in front of you. 2 of the guys on the defensive end that allowed Arizona to extend the zone because of their length and their disruption capabilities were Lewis and Bradley. And they played a major role in getting Arizona back into this and doing the thing that Arizona needed to do, force turnovers or make 3-pointers difficult on Purdue. And that allowed the Cats to cut into the lead. And then, you know, Arizona missed some key opportunities, and I think it was the stretch you were talking about. Arizona had, 3 or 4 possessions with the game at 6 points where they came away empty, and right. I think, Mike, 3 of those were the Ballo situations that you were talking about. Instead of utilizing that athleticism, at least trying to get to the rim or trying to get into foul trouble or, you know, trying to make some things happen, as they were successful to some degree. But then they went back to Larsson, who at times in that stretch was good, but then there were a lot of other times where he made some huge mistakes that ultimately hurt Arizona. And I don't know what his final turnover numbers are, but I think they were worse than the numbers on paper. And there was I think
he was credited for 5, but it felt like 7.
It felt like 9. Yeah. You know, and I'll give you an example of one just briefly. There was a play where Lewis got stuck on the perimeter and made a bad pass toward the top of the key. Purdue cuts into the lane and makes the play, and then Larsson and I think it was Lloyd, you know, fighting for the ball. Larsson can't get to the ball even though he's a better athlete. In that play, yes, Lewis made the mistake of leaving his feet and making a bad pass, but it's like a wide receiver with a quarterback. You've got to help him. You got to go to the ball. And Larsson didn't. And then that created a turnover situation that allowed it was a wasted opportunity when you couldn't afford to have them. So I thought there were situations here where, you know, you had guys who were playing better for you and guys who tilted the momentum in this match, go away from them. The point of having depth is when somebody isn't playing well.
Right.
One of the points of having depth. When somebody isn't playing well, you go to somebody else and you see if the somebody else can get it done. And today, Larsson and Boswell did not play well. I thought Lewis and Bradley were a little bit better, or at least tilted the game's pace in Arizona's advantage. And when those changes were made to go back in the other direction, it was again advantage Purdue.
All right, now hold on real quick, Brad. I got to read in here. We're going to go to the Desert Financial Credit Union by the numbers. This is presented by Desert Financial Credit Union, Arizona's #1 credit union named by Forbes. Okay. You look at this, you look at these stats, and actually they're not that far off. I will say this, Brad. I was surprised that the offensive rebounding numbers were this close. It felt to me like Purdue had a lot more offensive rebounds. What say you, Brad Allis? And then we will get to whatever a salient point you were about to make before I so rudely interrupted.
And that's interesting. I have different offensive rebounding numbers from ESPN, vastly different. Same thing, same difference, about 5. That's the beauty of the zone. It kept them from getting to the boards. When Arizona went in zone, they couldn't get to the boards. And it's kind of funny that Shu mentioned that 0-3 game, because that was the opposite. If you remember in 0-3, they went man with Hassan and Andre. They went 1-3-1 with Salim and Fry. And granted, Salim beat them in Lawrence. I know why he did it. And they got killed on the boards by Graves. Tonight, it was kind of the opposite. The zone kept them off the boards and kept them from not having to scramble to double down on Edey, which then didn't allow them to get those open looks from 3. And I'll tell you what I thought was interesting is, he brought Boswell, and I'm not even sure he brought Larsson, but brought Boswell in. They went on the little run. They went to a TV timeout, came out of the timeout, and he stayed with the starting lineup. And I think that was the mistake. Wasn't bringing Boswell in. The mistake was keeping Boswell in. Because again, from there, it was all Purdue down the stretch. To me, once you see them get, I think it was a little 6-0 run, maybe even 4-0 run, you go right back to KJ and Jaden Bradley. And while Jaden Bradley did almost nothing offensively, the offense ran pretty well with him out there.
Yeah, and like you said too, like Schuster said, it felt like he tilted things in Arizona's favor. He was scrappy on defense. He forced some turnovers. He was getting he was getting in passing lanes. That was something that, and Shu, I think you you actually made a good point. You actually made a good point where you said the reason you have bench, the reason you have depth is when your guys are struggling to go to it.
And Brad, pick up on your second point when you get a moment. Sorry
about that.
After I cede. There are Arizona. The other thing that depth allows you to do is, and talent, depth and talent allow you to try different things as well. So Arizona had a game plan coming into this matchup, and the game plan did not work. Whatever. Purdue's game plan was better than Arizona's. So Arizona then had to try press. It didn't work particularly well. That's one of the things. Coaches are really concerned, really uncomfortable running a press because they hate giving up easy baskets. And so it's one of those things that because sometimes it doesn't work early, they don't stick with it longer. And maybe it ultimately works in your direction where you get the turnovers. And I think Lloyd sort of falls into that category. He doesn't look like a guy who particularly likes to get into open floor defensive pressing situations. But Arizona showed a willingness to try something. And when it went to one lineup where the zone worked in their favor, then that was something that it gave their defense an opportunity to get into the open floor, which is obviously Arizona's advantage. And I thought it allowed them to get back into the game, but ultimately the better half-court team won today. And that was Purdue when they had the opportunities down the stretch. And as a result, it was an 8-point game. Arizona had it at 4, and it looked like they had an opportunity. They just couldn't get over the mountain today. But at least, so the depth is there and the talent is there that allows you to try to do different things to see if something will work. And some Arizona teams in the past just haven't had that ability. So you feel good about that prospect. The frustration, Mike, as you noted, is how from a coaching standpoint, they ultimately went away from the players who were, I think, giving them the best chance of success today to get over the hump and get the W.
All right. An old nemesis of ours, Rudy Bastillos, Brad Allis, says, I hope to never see a Zona game. Our team is too good, too athletic for that. What say you to the irritant, Rudy Bastillos?
Sean Miller? That's Sean Miller's burner account. Again, do I love zone? No, but if it works, it works. And the fact is, unlike what the guy said, they went zone and Edey couldn't get much. When they went back to man, that Edey got his. And again, I'm not discounting Edey. Edey's a great player, but Edey was not the best player on the floor today for either team. The two best players on the floor were Lawler 1, Love 2, Smith 3, and Johnson 4. Yeah. And maybe not quite in that order. Edey was very good. Don't get me wrong. But I'll say this: I think Jaden Bradley versus Kylan Boswell. And Boswell's the better player, no doubt about it. But today, Jaden Bradley is, for lack of a better word.
You called it, Brad. Give yourself some credit. But
Jaden Bradley is the game manager quarterback. He was 0 for 1 from the field, and it was a good look. Not a great look, good look. He had 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. In what? I don't know. I have the ESPN numbers up because the stat broadcast was faster than my internet. It kept spoiling the game for me. But conversely, Boswell, I think, was 3 rebounds, 1 assist, no steals. So Bradley he was solid. I'm going to guess Bradley's plus minus was probably +7, +8. I'm guessing Boswell's was -12. He didn't for lack of a better, he didn't throw a pick. He didn't take a bad sack. He also didn't throw a touchdown pass. So
he was Brady Batten.
Yeah, sometimes you need a steady quarterback. He was Anu Solomon. Sometimes you need Anu Solomon, and sometimes you need Khalil Tate. And today they needed Anu Solomon to just, again, and congrats to Rich Rod for winning the bowl game with Jacksonville State.
Very cool.
So today, yeah, Bradley, again, he wasn't going to win this game for you, but he wasn't going to lose the game for you. And not that Boswell necessarily lost the game for him, but when Boswell and Larsson were out there, bad things happened too many times. And that is why, I think today I would have gone with Bradley longer, and I would have gone with KJ Lewis longer. Again, because I think you got enough offense from the other 3 guys, especially Love and Johnson.
All right, the Gila River Casino. You guys have been waiting for this. John Schuster and I went to go watch Frank Caliendo, and guess what? We got to go hang out backstage with Frank Caliendo.
Can't say I'm not a little jealous.
I want to share a story about that before this show wraps up. Please continue with your very important read about the Gila River Casino, Mike Luke.
We were always trying to figure out where the Gila River Casino was and trying to figure out which ones. We made it. We found the Gila River Casino. It's got the two cool little blue waves. We 1000% know that this is the Gila River Casino. And again, the people that we talked to had nothing but great things to say about it. So again, check out the Gila River Casino and Resorts. Again, you do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playGila.com for more details. Again, they offer an authentic and immersive experience, the Gila River Casino. And one other thing, Arizona Lottery. Maybe you look at Jacob Franklin and you say, man, that guy hit the genetic lottery because he's 6'8". Or Brody Dryden, same thing, 6'8". Well, none of us are 6'8". Guess our best chance to hit the lottery is the Arizona Lottery. Check it out, the Arizona Lottery. Go out and buy your holiday scratchers today. Find a retailer and our friends at Circle K near you at Arizona Lottery. You must be 21 years or older. Please enjoy responsibly. All right, where were we going with this? Oh, a couple people have asked. John Schuster, this is actually a Schuster and a William Brad Alice question. The 30 days of Peacock trial. You guys both know, or you guys both have an interesting a variety of stuff. What would you guys be watching on Peacock for the next?
First of all, this is why I'm puzzled, because I did just start watching an old show, and it was actually a show our good friend Rob Lance loves. Started watching House this week on Peacock. House has commercials. The basketball game for me did not have commercials. Other people said they had commercials. So I don't know what tier of Peacock I have. I have enough that I get commercials on House and WWE events, because that's what I also watch. I watch WWE pay-per-views, but I don't get commercials during basketball games. So I got the Peacock version of the Pac-12 networks wave thing that fills in when they don't have enough ads sold. So that is what I'm watching on Peacock. I watch the WWE pay-per-views. So I think we've got I think Royal Rumble might be the next one, which is the best one of the year. And I've been watching House. I'm only about 7 or 8 episodes. He's always going to get the first 2 diagnoses wrong. He's then going to send Mike Tomlin lookalike Oumar Epps to do something shady at the person's house. And then he's going to make vaguely inappropriate sexual remarks to the girl doctor. That's apparently every episode. I don't know if it changes because I think I got 8 or 9 seasons left, but that's what my analysis of House is. Right, and only one time did the person die.
All right, Eric Funkman, I need to make fun of this comment real quick, and then John Schuster, you will have the floor. All right. The Big Ten basketball stinks, dude. It's the most overrated crap product out there. You'll get 13 teams in. You'll all get knocked out in the first round. Purdue, Purdue, wink, wink, nod, nod. Again, it's pretty cool that it's cool you guys won. Got to give you credit on that. But at the end of the day, you play in a minor league basketball conference. It stinks. That's what I'm going to say about it. And I will bet you whatever you want. Arizona goes further. We will have no Big Ten love on this show because, again, the Big Ten stinks. All right, back to Peacock, John Schuster.
That show's probably pretty good. So if that show's on Peacock, watch it. Right. Not that painting, but the show that painting represents. Also, they probably have Monk on Peacock, too, and Monk is sort of a derivative of Columbo-inspired derivative. Probably consider watching that as well. And Brad's analysis of House, even though he's seen 3 episodes, pretty much spot on for the next 8 years, but it's a very good and rewatchable show, so you could do a heck of a lot worse. Well done, Brad, Alex.
My wife will tell you that she likes to rewatch for the 900th time Law and Order SUV. On Peacock,
SUV, correct.
And I think she watches some of the originals, but she prefers the Stabler.
The Kenny Stabler?
No, not Kenny Stabler. Not quite as cool as Kenny Stabler. And I forget the lady's name. I can't think. I've seen them. I've seen them all 3 times. My wife literally that's one of those comfort shows because she can just kind of zone out and remember. Oh yeah, the lawyer is going to end up doing it in the 3rd act. So yeah, Law and Order SUV, Law and Order #1, Law and Order. Portland, Law and Order, Las Vegas. Watch all the Law and Orders.
Big picture, though, this game again, Purdue
meaningless for both teams. Maybe a bigger win for Purdue than a loss for Arizona, but you lost to the number 3 team an hour from their campus. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, see, at the end of the day, this game doesn't worry me a ton. What did worry me a little bit, though, I'll be honest, in the first half, was letting white guys that can shoot threes be wide open the entire. These were threes that. These were not difficult threes. These were not Salim Stoudemire pulling up from the cactus, Mike Luke crossing Rudy Bastillos up and hitting the back, the fadeaway 3. These were wide open threes. That to me was a little concerning and honestly, Shu, a little perplexing, being that
it's an advantage that Arizona should have athletically and defensively.
Yeah. I mean, what did you guys think about that?
But again, and this concerned me. And I think if you go back to the show that we did with Ben last week, this was one of the areas where I thought Purdue excelled. And then I didn't think necessarily that excelled to this level, but they run the best pick game in college basketball. Edey helps that because Edey's so immense. It's hard. Mike, I think last week you talked something about you can't go out and scout with a broomstick. You can't play length defensively by being Mike Luke out there with a broomstick, trying to pretend that you're taking up space in the rest
or the
of
ladder
in a practice or the ladder in a practice situation. Well, you know what else you can't do in a practice situation? Pretend. You can't fake 7'5", 280. And getting around those screens, you can tell this guy's tough. This guy's tough. This is what they do. This is what they do. Here they are. They're going to work their way through screen. You can tell from the first play of the game, Purdue ran a play that I think screened off of 3 people. Edey was the top one. I think Lawyer had an open 3. Larsson was 2 guys late. And it was like, and it was the harbinger for the rest of the day. But Purdue does a great job with its pick game and getting open threes as a result. And Arizona found out the hard way that was the case and had to go to other avenues to try to negate that a little bit. I think Arizona's plan to a large degree in this game, especially after that first half where they were down 11 at the break and Purdue had put 49 on them, was Purdue can't possibly shoot this well in the second half. We're going to get a regression to the mean. They are hitting everything, and eventually they're going to cool off, and things are going to work in Arizona's favor. If the Cats just stick with what it is that they do, then they'll be fine. And then the first 5 minutes of the second half, Purdue just kept doing the exact same thing. The first 4 or 5 looks in the second half that Purdue had were basically chip shots, unchallenged, and because Arizona's offense worked pretty well in that stretch. They couldn't gain any ground. Because Purdue was still running good stuff. And then Arizona had, so the regression to the mean philosophy didn't work in the first 20 minutes. And then it didn't work in the first 5 minutes of the second half. And now you're down to 15 minutes and you're still down double figures. And possessions start to get a little more crunch time. And, that was when Arizona finally went to the zone. And I think it obviously played a role in getting them into the open floor with deflections on the perimeter, finally utilizing the athleticism that they have, the advantage in that capacity. And that's when Purdue went cold. I thought, additionally, there were 2 or 3 interesting sequences in this game that I think, and it was something that Brad alluded to in the right out of the gate about how it felt like an NBA game with a lot of ebb and flow. Ebb number 1 was about 6 minutes into the game. Arizona had gotten up to a 17-11 lead. And Mike, I think you talked about this too. There wasn't a media timeout until the 11:38 mark. Right. But what you could tell, after Arizona was up 17-11, they then got tired and got sloppy. And Purdue scored on 3 consecutive possessions, and by the break had a lead that they never gave up. Tommy Lloyd at the half told, I think, one of the sideline reporters that he should have called a timeout to try to stem that a little bit. No, just foul somebody. If you're tired and you want to stop the clock, Arizona had 1 foul at that time.
Right.
So it wasn't like they were in danger of anybody getting in foul trouble. It wasn't like they were necessarily in danger of getting, that much closer to the bonus. If you can see that your team is tired, and for whatever reason, Purdue weathered that better than Arizona did, even though it was playing at Arizona's pace. And maybe Arizona was playing a little bit too fast and a little bit too hectic. But you could see it especially with Larsson. Larsson looked like he was sucking air in the last couple minutes, and he made a couple really pivotal turnovers and defensive losses that allowed Purdue to cut 17-11, where Arizona had the advantage. And then they controlled the rest of the second half. The next sequence that I thought was pivotal was at about the 13-minute mark of the second half. And I think one of the reasons that Arizona made its run, and I understand what Matt Painter did, I probably would have done the same thing in this sequence. You've got a double-figure lead. You're waiting for the 12-minute timeout. You give your guards, who have been phenomenal, a break. You don't want them to play 40 minutes. You need them down the stretch. But what happened during that stretch is that Arizona, over the course of the next 2 or 3 minutes, got right back into the game, and then you didn't know exactly how this thing was going to turn out until Purdue was able to get into a half-court game, and those guys were able to step up again. I thought those were 2 key sequences that were kind of interesting that laid out the, Brad Allis's observation about overall ebb and flow. But from Arizona's standpoint and Lloyd's standpoint, if you think your team is tired and running out of gas and doing stupid stuff, you have 2 options. You can call timeout or you can foul someone. And I would have gone for the foul option just to stop the clock and regroup.
William?
I would go back to, the thing I think I discounted with Edey, and it goes to the point of them getting those wide open looks. In my podcast, I talked about Edey, the offensive player, but I only talked about him, the scorer. Was he going to get away with that extra contact? And he really didn't. I mean, he had maybe 1 or 2 that might have been offensive, but I thought for the most part, he beat Arizona, he beat him with footwork and with height. I discounted just how big he was width wise and what that meant for those screen and rolls or those screen and pops. And that's to me where I take some solace from this game. I'm not going to pretend Lawler and Smith aren't good players. They're good players. They're better than, we discount them being white guards or whatever. But they're not the same guys.
Why are you bringing race into this, Brad?
Because you did earlier, Mike.
Yeah, Mike Luke.
But, they're not the same guy. Although you might see guys who shoot the same. They're more athletic than you're going to see at Utah Valley or whoever Arizona's first round opponent is. But the difference is that team's not going to have a guy with the size of Edey who can move. And that's the difference. The reason they got those, or I should say the reason, a major reason they got those wide open looks, which to their credit, they just knocked down, was because Edey and Arizona, A, not being able to get around him, and B, Arizona having to concentrate so much on Edey when trying to play him man-to-man with some help. So to me, while I didn't like Arizona's perimeter defense in this game, you're not going to get the same look against a less athletic team without a dominant generational size-wise big man. Now, some people are mentioning Decker. The Decker slam, that dude is a first-round draft pick. That dude is better than Lawler, or Lawyer. No offense. Lawyer's a good player. But to me, that's the one thing I take away from this game. Purdue's unique. There's one Purdue in America right now because there is one Zach Edey in America. And to their credit, Matt Painter schemed it up really well for 30 of the 40 minutes. Again, he had no answer for the zone, but Arizona had no answer in the man-to-man.
All right, now we're going to talk, first of all, the Desert Financial Credit Union. All right, here's the deal. When you open a free checking account online, get $200 in bonuses. Get started by visiting desertfinancial.com/200. Again, these people are for the people, by the people. Join a credit union that is committed to giving back to the community and sharing success with the members. All right, I do agree. Philly B probably should have gone into the game at some point. Not sure that we shouldn't have burned Dylan Anderson's red shirt as well. Get him in there. Shu, I got to ask you this. This has been asked multiple times. Was there anything concerning, big picture, about Arizona that you took out of this game?
As much as I have complimented Purdue's pick and roll game and screen and pop game, which again I think is the best in the country for reasons that we have outlined, Arizona I thought was a step lazy on a lot of that as well, and that concerned me. As good as Arizona was last week against Wisconsin in stopping that, so Wisconsin does a lot of the same stuff. They were not as good at that today. I think Arizona maybe came into this game underestimating Purdue's backcourt, and it hurt them. I think most people who thought Arizona was going to win this game, and I know that's a lot of them, even though, remember, Purdue was a 2-point favorite going into this matchup as far as the gamblers were concerned, thought that Arizona's backcourt and its athleticism in that regard would be the difference. But while they had moments that certainly indicated that athleticism paid dividends, Purdue's backcourt was better today. Right. And that was that was an area that I think kind of caught me off guard. I would say the thing that maybe concerned me the most, it wasn't so much, Arizona scored 84 points and shot 52% from the floor.
Right.
One of the small thing on the court, other than giving up 92 points for a team that we have become accustomed to playing good defense. That would be a concern if we see a bunch of other teams put up in the 80s and 90s on Arizona and shoot 55% from the floor. Then you start to wonder, even the dog starts to wonder about how good Arizona's defense ultimately is. So those are clearly some issues, maybe. Right now it's a one-off, but, obviously in the NCAA tournament, you're concerned. What have I been harping on the floor all year long, Mike Luke?
What?
It starts with an R. The second letter is
rebounding.
The third letter is a B.
Rebounding.
Yes.
It felt like, Shu, I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm going to. It felt, especially in the first half, like Purdue, I bet you had 12 points off offensive rebounds and went right to three-pointers. Go ahead, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're exactly right. And that was an area where Arizona cannot allow that to happen. Arizona has been excellent rebounding against Michigan State. They dominated Wisconsin on the glass, and they lost this game, I think, rebounding-wise by somewhere in the neighborhood of 5. Cannot do that. The whole point of being successful in college basketball is being able to rebound. Arizona has been an exceptional rebounding team that got it handed to them in key parts of today's game. By the way, the offensive rebounding stat, Mike, I think Arizona's rally made the offensive rebounding numbers much closer than they actually were. So you're looking at, wow, it was only 5 rebound difference from an offensive standpoint for Purdue. But in the parts of the game that mattered, that gave Purdue the advantage that ultimately Arizona wasn't able to overcome, it was Purdue that was dominating the glass and separating itself significantly with offensive rebounds and second shot opportunities. Now, the second thing from a coaching standpoint that concerns me is that while I enjoyed a willingness to try different things to get back into the game, and I like that Arizona has the kind of depth and talent that gives them the ability to do that, I thought I saw some stubbornness from Tommy Lloyd today. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of things strategically that we talked about. And in an NCAA tournament game, you ain't got the time to be stubborn.
Right.
You need to figure out what works. And frankly, and we'll only pick on them today as examples because they had bad games today, understanding that they have immense value to the overall success of this program. But if a guy like Boswell is not playing well, you'd better bench him for somebody who is. If a guy like Larsson is not playing well, you'd better bench him for someone who is, because that's the reason you have depth. If your backup isn't playing well, then you're going to have to play somebody start. Moore, who's a starter. Conversely, give you an example of this. Ballo. Krivas barely saw the floor today. We've become accustomed to Krivas play, 12, 15 minutes a game? Ballo plays the best. How much was he on the floor today? It felt like 2, 3.
Right.
I think Lloyd and the coaching staff made a concerted belief that Krivas was out of his element and Edey, he was not going to be able with Edey, and they had to ride to the end. Which is, and so
Ballo looked tired too.
Yeah, and that's understandable. Arizona, one of the things that was talked about a lot coming into this game is that Arizona has the kind of depth on the inside that can wear down somebody like Edey. It's basically 2-on-1, 3-on-1, and so forth. Well, Arizona in the end went 1-on-1. They went Ballo against Edey, and Edey ultimately got the better of them. Now, hopefully later in the year, Krivas will get a little bit better. There will be a confidence level for Arizona's coaching staff in that capacity, and maybe they'll get another one of these big guys coming off the bench that helps in these kinds of games to give them a little bit more depth on the front line as well. But you had 3 stubbornness examples, I think, today. You had sticking with Larsson, which was more often than not a problem. Sticking with Boswell, who was definitely a problem, and riding Ballo all the way to the end because you didn't think Krivas was ready to get it done. And so what Purdue was able to do to a large degree was negate Arizona's depth. But Lloyd's stubbornness in that regard today was something that perhaps might concern me if you get into a tournament situation where things aren't going your way. You kind of have to figure out what to do quickly because especially in the tournament, teams don't turn the ball over. And so when you get down in the tournament, the clock runs out fast. You get down 12 tournament game, it becomes a heck of a lot more difficult to get back into that matchup.
All right, time for the BetMGM Sportsbook app. Sign up for BetMGM today. Use bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app of at least $10. If that bet loses, your bonus bets will be available once your initial wager is settled. Check out the show notes for details. Again, bet against me. I'm generally wrong. If I give you a lock, say, Mike Luke, that guy's a bonehead, I am going to pick against him. Now, let's hear Shane Diefenbach with the disclaimer.
Problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., New York, or Ontario.
All right, William Brad Alice, what say you about John Schuster's remarks? Then we got to get to Frank Caliendo, I believe.
No, that was my point. If I'm going to, you know me, I'm not a hot take guy, but my hot take is I've got some concerns with Tommy. Potentially. That's things I'm looking for this season. Because remember, he did this last year against Princeton. He rode Kirk Kriisa. Kylan Boswell played 12 minutes, and Kriisa was awful. And then Kriisa was probably shown the door. Today, he did some really good tactical things. Most notably going to zone. Probably went 5 minutes too late. But not sticking with KJ Lewis and Bradley, I think, was a mistake. Now, is this an indictment on Tommy Lloyd? No, because we just pointed out where Hall of Famer Lute Olson did the same thing against Roy Williams. And 2 months earlier, they won the game because of Salim Stoudemire. Remember at the game in Lawrence, Arizona goes down big. Salim goes crazy. Salim's my favorite player probably of all time, and it's the Salim shining moment. There's one where they're milking clock, and Salim decides to jack it from the corner, put Arizona up 20. Today, however, and he should have, Tommy should have stayed with them, especially when he brought the 2 guys back in. Purdue promptly scores, 4 or 5 in a row. Go back to him. So that's a concern. Do I think that makes Tommy Lloyd a bad coach? No. Does that mean Arizona's losing to Harvard in the first round? No. But I want to see him learn from his mistakes, and we'll see if he does today. Because again, I thought he made a few tactical errors today, and we all know Matt Painter is a Hall of Fame coach from November to February, so I think, I want to see what Tommy learns from this, because when that zone was out there with those 2 guys, they were blowing the doors off of Purdue. Purdue went 6 minutes without a score.
John Schuster, Frank Caliendo.
So Mike has made you folks aware that he and I went to Frank Caliendo last week. You know, you've seen Caliendo or listened to Caliendo on his show before. Caliendo knows his stuff. So that means that Saturday after the Wisconsin game, we drive up to the venue in Phoenix. And if there's an unmade reality show that might be worth picking up, it's the ineptitude and incompetence of John Schuster and Mike Luke on the road. Let's start. One of us doesn't know directions. The other one can't figure out how to use Kid app. So we ultimately try to figure out get lost, walk the wrong way about as often as you possibly can. Mike opens up his GPS and says we're 15 feet from the venue. Neither of us see us. We can't figure out where the venue is, even though the neon sign that says Stand Up Comedy Club is about 10 feet away from above us. And then it takes forever to figure out, oh, wait, that big thing there is maybe where we need to go. Mike tries to play big guy, goes up to about 17 different people who work at the venue. Hey, I'm Mike Luke. I've got these fancy tickets. And all of them say, yeah, sure. Go to the end of the line, just like everybody else. So yes. We eventually get to the end of the line. But Mike, because he's big time, decides that he's still, even though the line is moving, we're ultimately going to get into this place, sort of decide I'm going to walk right past the person who's holding some sort of thing that goes through reservations and try to get, right to the front of the line as well. So I have to pretend that I'm my Mike Luke and I've got reservations. And then he has to meet me at the front. And eventually we get in, sit in the wrong spot, get told that we've sat in the wrong spot and we have to sit somewhere else. I tell you all of that to get to this. We see comedian 1, comedian 2, Caliendo's on. They're good. Caliendo's on for 45 minutes, does his impressions. 30 minutes of that show is a set routine. His impressions are excellent. 15 minutes are basically by the, the audience. Show is done. So we all leave. Mike texting Caliendo through the whole, making this up. He's bleeping texting Caliendo, beginning, end. So he walks up to the security guard, shows the security guard in the back. Yeah, I've got this. Frank. He calls him Frank, because they're on a first name basis. Frank says I can go backstage. The security guard, who doesn't care and just wants to move on to the next person who's bothering him, decides to open the door and let us in. The second he lets us in, Caliendo, who is talking to the other 2 comedians and a couple of jocks from KUPD who look like they're casting call rock jocks who have been at that station for 40 years. Caliendo looks directly at Mike Luke, ignores everybody else, and the 2 of them talk for 30 minutes locked into each other about U of A basketball. The star in the room was not Frank Caliendo. Mike Luke went backstage. The star in the room was the guy who Brad is pointing to, Mike Luke. Caliendo was absolutely awestruck by Mike Luke. I kid you not, spent the entire time that they were there breaking down the 3rd string guy from Corona Day something, the 5th string forward from someplace in Chandler, some other recruit who might 13 years old who's awesome in Augusta, Georgia. They were talking about Lloyd's strategy on this, the strategy on it was throwing names out that I could never begin to remember. Caliendo, if it wasn't for having a late night, some exclusive fake VIP show, he and Mike Luke would have talked basketball for 3 hours and Caliendo wouldn't have known and would not have cared that anyone else was in the room, because the true star on that night is that guy, not the guy that we went to see, who is a nationally renowned comedian who has been on network TV.
You know what? On that note, we're going to sign off right here because there's nowhere to go but down from there. But for John Schuster, William Brad Alice. Oh, by the way, no better time to become a PHNX diehard. Jacob Franklin, pull that shirt up real quick if you would. These things are awesome. They're going like hotcakes. BTFD, new release, PHNX. Check it out. Go to gophnx.com. You will thank me later. But for John Schuster, Brad Alice, the 6'9" Jacob Franklin behind the scene, Rudy Bastillos with KUPD. We will be back with you. Brad's going to be back on Monday. This is correct, Brad.
I believe so.
All right. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats postgame show.
We all silly like the mayor.